So guys, I decided that I want to talk about, for another tough videos, tough lessons is, my worst birthday. And, there's a couple of things that I'll say about my birthday that I really don't celebrate it for a couple of reasons. Because when I was younger, I kind of felt that, when it came to my birthday, some people acted pretty selfish. Like I remember like one year when I was living with my brother, he got me an inflatable mattress just because what would happen was that we worked different shifts. So he was kind of like saying, okay, I'm giving you an inflatable mattress. So, you know what, you don't sleep in my bed. And it wasn't really just for, me, it was just more for his convenience. Or I remember like one time when I was a kid, my parents took us bowling, but I hated that because I hate bowling and it was something that my brother enjoyed. So I kind of felt like, oh, well, my dad kind of mistaken something that my brother liked for something that I liked. And I also remember like one time my dad flipped out at me for asking for a gift that was like $50 when he kind of had my younger brother, through like $300, $400 birthday parties for him. So I always feel like, with my birthdays, it's always sometimes something that I want. But in my past, I remember it not being good. And sometimes I remember it just an excuse for people to be selfish. Or I remember like one time I came home from college. So my birthday dinner was, my dad said, I'm going to cook for you and we're going to save some money that way. Mind you, my parents make over $100,000 a year. And like I said, it was my younger brother. My dad would have no problem like going to a restaurant or other things like that. So I kind of always understood that my dad was also trying to teach me to save money, but he kind of did it in a way that felt, very like undermining. So like when I got older, I never really celebrated my birthday because I always felt that it was kind of like, a letdown. And I think I look at it a little bit differently now. I understand, our parents try to teach us things. Sometimes, parents are busy and they're really rushed. So they're not always, thinking about what we want really. So I think then also too, we talk about how we see kids online being very ungrateful, so without further ado, I want to talk about like my worst birthday and then kind of evaluate it at the end. So this happened in 2001. So this was a couple of months after the World Trade Center attack. So September 27th is my birthday. So I remember what happened was that I wanted to stay home and play video games all day with my brother. And then what happened was that on my birthday, my dad opened the door and he said, like, get out of bed, get out of that fucking bed. You're going to go down and we're going to see your grandmother on your birthday. So automatically it was that thing too, where my father just didn't want, if I said something like that, no, dad, I want to stay home and play video games all day, he probably would have slapped me in the face. It was not really for me. It was really for my grandmother. So it kind of goes down to like the first issue, which is, and I get that, sometimes you have that older generation, which kind of says, okay, what your birthday, it's like they say about funerals. Funerals are not really about the deceased. It's about the living, making peace with the deceased. Birthdays are not really about the person. Sometimes it's more about the family celebrating the person. So it was something that my father really wanted. And at that time, I didn't really like going to New York City. So I remember like, just going to going singing in a car all day, going to New York City, visiting my grandmother, and then coming back. And I remember like, the other thing that happened was I remember my dad like went to a massage parlor, like chiropractor, nothing inappropriate, you guys. So he made us like sit in the car for like an hour and a half waiting for, because he didn't want to drop us at home. He just wanted to have us sit in the car for an hour and a half because he's not going to go out of his way for us. And I kind of told my brother, I was like saying, our dad, is just a very selfish man. And I know like one time, I sent a text message to somebody, like I think last year, and I said like, I come from a very selfish family, but that kind of was just very evidential. Like I think like, that's how it kind of felt at times. Like, yes, family, you cook for your kids, you do all these things for kids, but sometimes you can have parents who are inherently selfish or they will put what they want to do first over their kids. And, fuck the kids was really the mentality that I grew up with. It's not about you. Children are like dogs, like you have to feed them, you have to provide shelter for them, but you will tell them what to do. You will order them around. They're like animals almost, like where you control them, nonstop really. That's kind of how I felt growing up. So I remember that as well, really. And I also remember one thing that I hated about my birthday was that I would get checks from my aunt. And the reason why I hated that was because my parents were lazy they were always busy with their work that they would never catch the checks really. They would always just, leave it on the counter and never really touch it. It's actually gotten to a point that whenever I got like a check from a relative, I'll just throw it in the trash really, because it just got to a point like where my dad would never ever cash it. And I remember sometimes I would get kind of mad because my dad would also do something like say, okay, write a thank you letter. And it's also a little stupid too, because first of all, this was in 2001. This is not the 1800s. This is not the 1900s. Why should I be writing letters to my grandmother or my aunt or other relatives at that time? Really, that's kind of like dumb. I'm not some baron in a castle. Like it just seems a little like tedious. And I understand like maybe a phone call would be good, but just to write a thank you letter, that's just like I've said before, that's just not my thing really. I remember, like side story. I remember like one time, I had a bunch of like letters or whatever, a bunch of envelopes, in my room when I was like 8 or 9 years old. And I remember my dad getting mad because I said like I have no purpose to write letters, and he kind of picked up all the letters and threw in my face. He said like I actually start writing people, and I kind of got mad because I was the same idea. You're like, dude, who the fuck am I going to write to, and all that stuff, So it's one of those things too, like how I've said like parents kind of have different like philosophies and ideas and approaches really, but yeah, it was always kind of like that really, where like again, if I ever got like a check from my relatives, my parents would never cash it because they were just lazy. But I remember like one time like I don't know, I think like that day too, like I said, I just got a check and I said something like, oh, well, it's never, no one's going to cash it. My dad just burped and said, well, that sucked. And as I said before, that it was kind of like one of those things too, where like, as I said, your father responds with a burp and saying that sucks really. And then after that night, we had like birthday cake. And I also remember like I wanted Sonic Adventure 2, really great game. But my brother got Sonic Adventure 1 for me. And I remember like feeling really mad. Like I had like this image that I was going to take the video game disc and start slitting my wrists with it and other things like that. And the reason why I got mad was because I told him I want Sonic Adventure 2, but my brother made a big stink and he said, no, whenever you get a video game, you have to do it in sequential order. It's Sonic Adventure, and then you get Sonic Adventure 2, and then Sonic Adventure 3. It's almost like if I wanted to watch, how should I kind of say that? It's almost like if I wanted to watch Lord of the Rings, that was a movie that was coming out at that time. Imagine if my brother wanted to see that film and I said, no, you have to read all the books first, and then you can see the movie. So he gets like maybe, 1,500 pages of fantasy stuff. He's not going to be that happy, so that's a hypothetical really. But that's how I kind of felt with that birthday, just, it was always just, as I said, that when I feel like, when I've had a birthday, I think many times while I've had some good birthdays, a lot of them were not the best ones because I feel like, my parents always kind of made it about, it's not really made about themselves really, but they always kind of didn't prioritize, what I wanted first. And I also feel that, as we get a little older, we kind of realize that, like sometimes we understand, we see where our parents come from, but sometimes, we realize that sometimes, our parents are inherently selfish, and sometimes they will like go out of their way not to be selfish. I do remember, I remember maybe the last birthday I celebrated with my family, my parents were saying happy birthday to me, and my older brother was kind of talking to me about some funny joke he saw on Beavis and Butthead, and my younger brother was just kind of like making fun of my older brother because my older brother was kind of like had some social issues with social skills. And I remember my dad kind of saying, okay, Matt, you need to, stop what you're fucking doing and be in the real fucking world. And it was also one of those things too where it seemed like, again, we can't have drama, we can't have class really. Like my brother just had his wedding a few months ago. I wasn't invited, But I bet if I was invited, if I was allowed to be there, and I said something like, you know what, I want to crash this wedding, or go get you some, or don't ruin your life with a kid. Um, Stay single, man. Don't ruin your life with a kid. Don't like if you want to have kids, that's going to be like the end of your happiness. Because I don't want to have kids and other things like that. So I bet if I said those things, it's the same type of interjecting something that's inappropriate for the situation, really. So that's kind of just why I don't celebrate, because I really feel that it's usually about other people's emotions and emotional immaturity. Because I will say this, that in my family, emotional immaturity is kind of a huge issue. It's being inconsiderate. I would come from a good family, but my family's a bunch of inconsiderate assholes, and I'm part of that too. I can be an inconsiderate asshole, but I'm working not to be an inconsiderate asshole. But for a lot, for like, but that was kind of like my worst birthday. And I would also kind of say this, that I was adopted out of an abusive situation. I don't like celebrating my birthday because my biological mother was abusive to my older brother, neglectful and abusive to me. So it just brings up a bunch of pain, really. And I've kind of grew up with that mentality of, oh, well, you know what, your mother did this to you, did that to you, you need to forgive her. Oh, shut up and eat some cake, and get over it. I'm not really just, teaching, trauma management, teaching trauma avoidance, not teaching emotional management, teaching emotional avoidance is kind of what I grew up with. You know, people wonder why, I may have antisocial disorder or something like that. Like, you look at how I'm raised, and all that stuff. But the point of it is that when I kind of tell you guys that I think when I dissect it, it's not the worst birthday ever. There are plenty of people who, have birthdays in war-torn countries. There's plenty of people who are children, and then they have a parent that's in a bad relationship. So the kid, so what happens is sometimes people get murdered on their birthday. Sometimes people will murder their kids on their birthday. Sometimes people will abuse or hurt somebody intentionally on their birthday, or do child abuse or whatever, really, just to kind of give somebody a bad memory, really. My grandmother, what happened was that her husband died on her birthday. So, it's not really the worst birthday ever, really. Do I think that my dad was inconsiderate? Yes. Do I think that my brother was inconsiderate? Yes. Do I think that, if I grew up in a household where self-advocating and hearing where I'm coming from would be accepted and be respected, would that have helped me out? Absolutely, really. And that's kind of one of the things too. I think for all the birthdays that I've had, I think it was like when I was a freshman in college. I think it was when I was 19 years old. That was the last birthday I ever celebrated in my family. And I remember like one year my dad actually wanted me to go to their wedding my senior year, really. I'll go to my dad's 50th anniversary. My dad's 50th birthday party. Like, he wanted me to, like, he was gonna fly me down from like Vermont. But I just didn't do that because it brought up a lot of cringeworthy feelings, really. But I really don't like celebrating my birthday. I remember like sometimes my parents would have birthday cake, and like last slice of my birthday cake, there'll be a tradition like you get the last slice of your birthday cake. And it'll be like something that's around like 2 or 3 days later after my birthday, or eating it during the week, really. Sometimes I'd say, no, I don't even want it, or you can just throw it out, really. And my dad said, that's kind of like really, really sad. You don't even want the last slice of your birthday cake. You want to throw it in the trash, really. And I've kind of said that too. Is that, when you kind of have a bunch of birthdays that, just don't go your way, or it's about other people's like drama and selfishness and other things like that, really. You just don't want anything to be better. You just want to be a malcontent. I remember another birthday that I had where I was taking I was taking the Amtrak from from New Orleans all the way to New York, and the Amtrak guy who was like my room attendant. I left him a very bad review because I told him to actually wake me up when we were in Atlanta so I can get a slice of birthday cake. He didn't do that. He was actually having a big like fight with me because he thought that he didn't want me to get a complimentary beer. He was really just about, I don't want to go out of my way to do this, so he was kind of like a fucking asshole. But it's kind of like why I don't celebrate it, because usually when people know it's your birthday, sometimes people go out of their way to be a fucking asshole to you, or sometimes you may have parents who just teach a mentality of, it's your birthday, go fuck yourself. I want to teach you that life is not about you. What better day to teach you that life's not about you, where it's about your grandmother and go down and visit your grandmother. It's not about me going out of my way to drop you home so I can go to my chiropractor. It's not about me going out of my way to cash in a check for you. It's not about me hearing what your brother wants to get you for your birthday, and then he says something like, "Oh well, it's a video game, and you can't play Sonic Adventure 2 unless you play Sonic Adventure 1." Oh well, I'll talk to him and be like, "Oh no, this is what he wants, Sonic Adventure 2. Get him the fucking game. You don't have to go by your own like little rules in your fucking brain, so that's how I feel really, as I said, and there's a difference between being grateful and ungrateful. I think that sometimes if people and grateful is a really hard is really it's just a really hard barrier, but I do feel that that I think if I dissect it, like there's a bunch of things that didn't go the way that I wanted to, and I do think that there's a difference between somebody making an attempt to make your day special, and then there's people intentionally doing what they want to do, and if people are doing what they want to do, and it's not really to your benefit or it's not really for you, it's really on them, really. It's really on them being selfish. And I kind of feel that that's what's the case. It was really on my parents and my brothers being selfish. But, ungrateful is a little bit different. Ungrateful is more like if my dad, if my dad wanted to make dinner for me and he said, like, what, I'm not feeling well. I don't want to go out and anything like that. I just want to eat at home. I'll be like, okay, no problem. That's being grateful. Being ungrateful is to bring up that he's cheap. But if my dad was kind of saying something like, oh well, it's your birthday, but I want to cook at home because I want to save a couple of dollars, and my family makes over $100,000, and it's my dad's trying to throw in, I just want to celebrate your birthday, but I want to like save money while I'm doing it and put it in and rub that in your face, really. Then he's being ungrateful to me. My parents are being ungrateful to me, then I'm being ungrateful to them. There's a difference. But I just think that maybe my parents are trying to teach me how to save money in that situation. But yeah, I did grow up very differently. I did grow up with what, my feelings don't matter, that there was an alpha in the family, and the alpha, like my parents were the alphas, they had to be respected and all that. But that was my worst birthday. But I do say that I do agree that was more about them being selfish and my brother being selfish than really about me being ungrateful. They were ungrateful. They were ungrateful to me, but I also acknowledge that there's a lot of other people in the world who have way worse birthdays. Not the end of the world. So it is what it is.